His room was dim, bathed in amber light that seemed to cling to my skin like memory. The city murmured faintly outside, but inside it was just us, suspended in that strange space between decision and regret. I didn't move. Neither did he. But the silence between us kept pulling, drawing us closer by degrees of breath and heartbeat. I stared down at the glass in my hands, watching the liquid ripple as my fingers trembled slightly. Not enough for him to notice, or maybe he did. His gaze was sharp like that, always catching things I tried to hide. The way my legs pressed a little tighter together. The way I bit the inside of my cheek when I was nervous. The way I couldn't quite look at him for more than a few seconds without something in my chest stuttering. He sat down beside me. Not close, not yet, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. And then, without looking at me, he reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Just that. But the world tilted. I felt the warmth of his fingers graze my cheek, and my whole body reacted like he'd touched something buried deeper. Like his hand had found the switch to some part of me I'd kept dimmed for too long. My breath caught, small and involuntary, and I hated how much he must have heard it. He looked at me then. Slowly, like he was trying to memorize my expression. "I shouldn't have done that," he said, but he didn't move away. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. We were two liars orbiting the same confession. He leaned in just a little. Just enough. His arm brushed mine, barely there, but it was the kind of touch that made my skin burn with the absence of more. "Then why are you?" he asked. God. That question. Why was I? Why had I taken the long way home in my mind all week, building the fantasy of this moment with every unresolved glance we'd shared? Why had I worn perfume tonight, not just the everyday one but the one? Why had I come up here? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the truth sat too deep in my chest to reach. Or maybe I didn't want to touch it. Not yet. Instead, I looked at him. Fully. And for the first time, I didn't look away. His hand moved again, slower this time, brushing the side of my arm just barely. Fingertips skating over fabric, heat trailing behind. I inhaled sharply, and he paused. "You want me to stop?" he asked, voice rough. No one had ever said my name the way he said it just then, like a promise and a dare. "I don't know what I want," I breathed, though we both knew I was lying again. He leaned closer. His mouth hovered inches from mine, but he didn't kiss me. Instead, he let the tension build. Inch by slow, unbearable inch. I could feel his breath against my lips, the warmth of it, the hesitation, the ache. His eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up. He was waiting, giving me a chance to choose. I didn't move, didn't kiss him, didn't stop him. And in that stillness, something between us shattered. Or maybe it was born. His hand slid behind my neck, gentle but sure, pulling me just enough that I had to close my eyes. Not from fear, but from surrender. The first touch wasn't a kiss. It was the space before it. The moment where the whole world holds its breath and waits to see what you'll become. And in that moment, I wasn't a wife. I was just a woman who had stepped off the edge of her own restraint, and was still falling. He kissed me, but not like in the movies. No sweeping motion. No crashing into cabinets. Just breath. Close. Waiting. His lips hovered near mine like he was letting me choose. And maybe I did. Maybe I tilted my chin just slightly, or maybe I sighed too deep, too slow. But suddenly we were there. Not tangled, not wild, just barely touching, like our mouths were remembering something they hadn't yet done but somehow already missed. Behind us, the oven hissed. Smoke began curling out in thin, lazy spirals. Still, we stayed in that moment, hovering between decency and something deliciously irreversible. My body forgot how to lie. My hand found his chest, flat palm, steady pressure, but I didn't push him away. I just felt the drumbeat of his heart under my skin. Fast. Not reckless. Just certain. "I should go," he murmured against my mouth. "You should," I whispered back, not moving. His forehead rested against mine for a moment, and in that breathless stillness, I felt the gravity of every moment we'd ignored. The long glances during dinner parties, the way he stood a little too close when he handed me a glass, the conversations that danced too close to secrets. "You always make it hard to do the right thing," he said. "You always make it easy to forget what that is," I replied. His fingers brushed the hem of my sweater. Barely. A whisper of touch that made my stomach pull tight. My body flinched, not from fear but from recognition. It was like it had been waiting. Not for him. For this. The permission to want. Does he know? He asked suddenly. That you're lonely? I froze. That word, lonely, hit harder than any accusation. Because it was true. My marriage wasn't violent. It wasn't cruel. It was just quiet. Silent dinners. Chore lists. Missed calls. Nights spent on opposite ends of a shared bed like two continents drifting further apart. No, I admitted. He thinks we're okay. He stepped back slightly, enough to let me breathe, not enough to let me go. I could lie to myself, he said. Tell myself I didn't come here hoping for this. The alarm finally screamed, sharp, piercing. I turned away, fumbling toward the oven with trembling fingers. Opened the door. A blast of heat. The roast was blackened, smoking, ruined. He came up behind me. Not touching. Just watching. The kitchen, full of haze and heat and tension, became a confessional. What are we doing? I asked too quietly. He paused. Something we can't undo. And in that moment I realized what was burning wasn't just dinner. It was the structure. The safety. The image I'd carefully kept polished and presentable for years. I closed the oven. Turned. Met his eyes. And said, then don't stop. I didn't recognize the sound that left my throat when he touched me. It wasn't a gasp or a moan. It was softer, deeper, like something raw had been unlocked. Like my body was confessing before my mind could catch up. He didn't rush. That's what wrecked me most. Everything in me was coiled tight, screaming for release, for friction, for fire, but he moved like time didn't matter. Like this was a slow song no one else could hear. His fingers traced the line of my jaw, then lower, brushing the side of my neck, where my pulse betrayed every lie I was trying to tell. You're shaking, he said softly. I nodded. I don't know if it's fear or want, he finished for me. My breath caught. He didn't kiss me again, not yet. He just stood there, watching my body react to his nearness like it had a mind of its own. My chest rising faster, my lips slightly parted, knees loose, uncertain. Every inch of me pulled toward him, even while my mind whispered this is wrong. But my skin didn't seem to care. The ruined roast sat behind us, forgotten. Smoke hung in the air, curling around the light like a warning. Or a spell. I used to imagine this, he said, his voice rough. Before I hated myself for it. I flinched because me too. The secret glances, the dreams I never admitted out loud. How he'd look at me like I wasn't invisible. Like I still had weight. Still had heat. He stepped closer and this time I didn't back away. His hand slipped under the curve of my hair, resting at the base of my neck, and everything inside me screamed yes. Not out of lust. Out of need. Out of years of silence and compromise and waiting to feel wanted. I shouldn't be here, he whispered. Then leave, I dared. He didn't. His eyes searched mine, asking again silently if this was what I really wanted, if he should cross the final line. And I knew I should stop it. I should pull away. I should think of my husband upstairs, the life I'd built, the vows I'd spoken. But all I could think about was the way his body felt close to mine. I reached for his hand, laced my fingers through his. And in that moment the kitchen disappeared. No walls. No rules. Just two people standing too close to the edge, both already falling. The air had changed. Not just warmer, charged. Every breath was heavier. The space between our bodies didn't feel like distance anymore. But tension, stretching, trembling, begging to be snapped. And when I stepped into him, chest brushing chest, I felt it. The unraveling. He inhaled like I'd knocked the wind from him. Like he hadn't expected me to close that space. But I had. I did. And I wasn't sorry. I didn't know what was louder, my heartbeat or the voice in my head screaming this was a mistake. But the voice was fading, drowned beneath the thunder of something deeper. Hungrier. He didn't touch me right away. He just looked at me. I mean really looked, like he was memorizing me. Tracing the contours of my uncertainty with reverence and ache. You sure? He asked, and his voice cracked just barely. I nodded. Not because I was certain, but because I was ready to stop pretending. His hands found my waist, slowly, gently, like I might break. And maybe I would've if he'd rushed it. If he'd taken instead of asked. But no. He moved like every inch of me mattered. And God, the way he touched me. Like my skin had been asleep for years and he was waking it with nothing but heat. His thumb brushed the strip of skin just above my jeans. One single motion. But my breath hitched and my body arched and suddenly I felt everything. Every nerve. Every thought. Every forgotten part of myself lighting up in waves. His lips were at my ear now, barely brushing it as he whispered, "You're shaking again." This time I didn't answer. Because this time I wasn't sure where the trembling ended and the wanting began. He slid one hand up my spine under the fabric, slow and reverent, and my head tipped back with a soft, broken sound that wasn't quite a moan, but wasn't innocent either. It was surrender. The kitchen felt unreal now. Dim and golden, flickering like candlelight. The kind of moment where time stretched, elastic and fragile. I turned toward the counter, breathing hard, trying to find some anchor. Some way to slow down what was already slipping through my fingers. But he followed. His hands on either side of me now, body close enough to feel but not pressed. "Not yet. I want to be good," I whispered, eyes fixed on the scorched remains of dinner. "So be good," he said, his mouth at the curve of my neck. "But don't lie to yourself. Not tonight." I closed my eyes and leaned back into him. He moved behind me like he belonged there. Not possessive, protective. Like his body could shield me from the weight of what we were doing. And what we were about to do. My palms flattened on the counter, warm beneath my skin, as his hands traced a slow, deliberate path from my hips up to my ribs. Each inch was a question, and my body answered with tiny shivers, gasps I couldn't contain. There was no rush. Only rhythm. Only rise. We weren't speaking anymore. Not in words. We didn't need them. His breath at my neck said everything. "I see you. I want you. I've wanted you too long to pretend otherwise." And God, the ache of wanting what I shouldn't. What I'd denied. What I'd wrapped in guilt and hidden beneath routines and dinner plans and soft smiles that meant "Don't ask me how I really feel." But he was asking without saying a word. Asking with his hands, his mouth, his body pressed close enough to feel the tension I'd buried so deep it almost felt like identity. I turned in his arms. He let me. And when our eyes met, I wasn't the wife. I wasn't the rule follower. I wasn't the careful one anymore. I was just his for that moment. His hands came up to cup my face, gentle, reverent, and then he kissed me. Really kissed me. It wasn't urgent. It was deliberate. Tender. Like he wanted to taste every emotion I'd never said out loud. I gripped the front of his shirt, clutching him like he was the only real thing left in the room. And when we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. Not from the kiss. From what it meant. "I can't go back after this," I said. It wasn't a question. His eyes were dark, unreadable. But his voice was steady. "Neither can I." The floor felt uneven. The whole world off balance. And still I didn't let go. He reached behind me, flipped off the stove, then turned back with that same quiet intensity. "Let it burn," he said. And just like that I knew we weren't just crossing a line. We were erasing it. There was no music, but we moved like we were dancing, slow, close, swaying between hesitation and hunger. The heat between us wasn't metaphor anymore. It was physical, tangible, pressing in from every direction. My skin prickled with anticipation, every breath a question, every glance a dare. I let my fingers trace the curve of his jaw, down his neck, across his collarbone where the fabric parted just enough to tempt. His eyes fluttered shut, just briefly, but when they opened again something had changed. Like restraint was no longer in control. Like desire had taken the wheel and thrown the map out the window. "I used to picture this," I said. My voice surprised me. It was low, raw, like it had never been used for honesty until now. He tilted his head. "How far did you let the fantasy go?" I swallowed. "Not this far. Never this real." He leaned in, his forehead against mine again. "It's real now." I nodded, but I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, my hands restless. I pressed my palm to his chest again and felt it, his heartbeat strong and rapid, echoing the chaos inside me. He guided me backward slowly, until my back met the cool edge of the refrigerator door. The contrast made me gasp. And that sound, that gasp, seemed to unchain something in him. His hand slipped around my waist, pulling me in, and our bodies found that magnetic rhythm again. No choreography, just instinct. Like we were being moved by something older than rules. Older than reason. There was a moment, half a second, where he paused. Just stared at me, one hand tracing my cheek, his thumb brushing the corner of my mouth like he was memorizing it. And I felt it. The shift. We weren't just playing with fire anymore. We were the fire. He whispered my name, and it didn't sound like a name anymore. Sounded like permission. And I gave it. With a kiss that was half confession, half collision. I kissed him like I'd been starving. Like every other kiss in my life had been practice for this one. And when I pulled back, breathless, trembling, undone, I saw something in his eyes that stopped me cold. Flicker. A fear. Of wanting too much. Of knowing that what we just awakened couldn't be put back to sleep. Are we really doing this? I whispered. His answer was almost a growl. We already are. There's a point when want becomes need. When every nerve forgets how to behave, and the rules you once clung to crumble like ash on your tongue. That's where we were. He lifted me onto the edge of the counter. Not roughly, not urgently. It was quiet. Careful. Like he was placing something sacred exactly where it belonged. My legs parted slightly to steady myself, and he stepped between them, hands still resting at my hips like they might float away if he didn't hold on. I've never seen you like this, he whispered, eyes searching mine. Because I've never been like this, I said, my voice a breath, my fingers gripping the back of his neck. We weren't hiding anymore. We weren't sneaking glances or pretending this was just emotional static. This was skin. This was breath. This was the sharp, beautiful ache of giving in. And the more I let go, the more I realized I hadn't been touched in years. Not like this. Not seen. Not felt. I'd been kissed goodnight. Held during holidays. Smiled at across dinners that got colder with every passing year. But this was someone wanting me. Not out of habit. Not out of comfort. But out of something deep, ancient, and impossible to fake. His lips found my shoulder, soft at first, then slower, like he was learning me by taste. My head dropped back against the cabinets, a soft sound escaping me as his fingers splayed across my thigh, grounding me, claiming me without force. Tell me to stop, he said. But he didn't move. Could've. I should've. But my hands were already pulling him closer. I don't want you to, I whispered. And there it was. The truth. The truth I'd been hiding under polite laughter and wedding rings and forgotten anniversaries. I didn't want to be saved. I wanted to be seen. Craved. Needed. And in his eyes I saw all of that. The hunger. The conflict. The depth of someone who hadn't just crossed a line, but had waited on the other side for me to join him. Outside, the street was quiet. The night indifferent. Inside, the kitchen held a secret it would never tell. And as his hand slid up my sides, slow and reverent, I realized something that made my breath catch. The door was never locked. The house was still. The smoke had cleared, but the scent lingered. A ghost of something ruined. And us, we hadn't moved from that kitchen. Not really. Our bodies, yes. We'd stepped away. We'd straightened clothes, fixed hair, opened windows. Pretended we could tuck it all back in. But something had changed. Something had to. He stood across from me now, hands braced on the counter, head bowed like he was waiting for judgment or permission. I should feel guilty, I said, and my voice cracked under the weight of it. He looked up. Eyes red. Not from tears. From restraint. Do you? I didn't answer right away. Because guilt wasn't what I felt. Not then. Not exactly. It was something murkier. Heavier. Like mourning. Like stepping out of a dream and realizing you can never go back to sleep. I feel alive, I whispered. And that scares the hell out of me. He crossed the space again, slower this time. No hunger. Just gravity. His hand grazed my wrist, not possessive, just checking. Are you still here? I don't know what happens next, I said. He nodded. Me neither. We both looked at the oven. The roast, cold and blackened, was still inside. Forgotten. Destroyed. It's ruined, I said. So are we, he replied, but his voice wasn't sad. It was honest. And that honesty, that shared admission, felt more intimate than anything we'd done. We weren't lovers in the usual sense. We were witnesses. To each other's emptiness. to each other's need. He turned to leave. No dramatic goodbye. No promises. Just a glance back. One that said, if you ask me to stay, I will. But I didn't. I watched him go. And I let the silence wrap around me again, softer this time. Less like a punishment, more like a question. Later that night I stood outside, barefoot on the porch, a blanket around my shoulders and the stars overhead burning quietly. My husband never asked about dinner. He never came down. And I wondered, did he know? Did he feel the shift? Because something in me had cracked wide open. And it wasn't just lust. It was something older. Wilder. A part of me I'd buried under years of compromise and, I'm fine-ness. And now it was awake. Alive. Hungry. Sometimes we set fires not to destroy, but to see what survives the flames. And in that kitchen I didn't stop him. Because something in me wanted to burn.